The 100-Story Hotel. Two people check in to a 100th-floor hotel. When they go out, they leave their key with the receptionist. Upon their return, she informs them that the elevators are now out of order. As they walk up the stairs, they pass the time by telling each other some scary stories. At last, they reach the 100th floor, and one of them says, "I have one more terrifying story to tell you. It's the scariest one of all." I forgot the key. Skeleton in the closet. Two construction workers were renovating one of the big, old, fancy buildings in downtown. No one had used the place in decades, and they were trying to clear out anything salvageable before bringing in the crowbars and sledgehammers. When they opened a small closet behind an elevator, they were shocked to find a fully dressed skeleton. Of course they called the police. The whole place was cordoned off, investigated, dusted for prints, photographed, and the body taken away. Weeks later, out of curiosity, the construction workers called the police to ask who had they found in the closet. "Oh," said the police, "the 1956 National Hide-and-Seek champion." You can't get out. One dark and stormy night, the town drunk stumbled his way home after the bar had closed. Somehow, he got turned around and ended up walking through the cemetery instead of the road home. As the storm grew and the wind blew stronger, he thought he could hear a voice calling his name. It sounded nearby, but there were only graves around him. It sounded like it came from below. Suddenly, the ground opened up in front of him, and he fell down into an open grave. He could hear the voice clearly now, calling his name. The hole was very deep and very dark. As his eyes adjusted to the black, he saw a figure sitting in the darkness with him. It called his name, and he scrambled away in fear, trying to climb out of the terrible grave. Then the figure spoke again. "You can't get out," it said. The drunk gave a shout of pure terror and leapt straight up. He caught the edge of the grave with his hands, scrambled out, and ran for home as fast as he could go. Inside the grave, his neighbor Charlie sighed in resignation. He'd fallen in the hole a few minutes before his friend, and had thought that together they might be able to help each other climb out. Now he was going to have to wait for someone else to come along. One black eye. Everyone in town knew that the hotel had a room haunted by a ghost with one black eye. When the hotel was first built, there was a man who got into a fight in the bar. He took a punch to the eye and was knocked out cold. The owner had hauled him into a room to sleep it off, but the man never woke up, and he never left. The room has been haunted ever since. The room sat vacant for years, until one night, a family's car broke down, and they had to spend the night. "I'm sorry," said the hotel keeper, "but the only room I have left is haunted." The family didn't believe in ghosts, so they took the room. The mom and dad went to bed, and just as their son was about to go to sleep, he heard a ghastly voice say, "I am the ghost with one black eye." "Yeah, well," said the kid, "if you don't shut up, you're going to have two black eyes." Haunted house. "Hey, Mom, could we go visit a haunted house this year?" "Why? What's wrong with the one we live in?" What? Good night, son." The Book of Death. There was a young boy who loved to read books. He read everything he could get his hands on, and loved going to his favorite bookstore and browsing through the new titles. One day, the boy realized that he had read everything in the store. He confronted the owner and asked if he had anything else. The owner looked at him gravely and said, Yes, I do." He reached behind the counter and pulled out an old book. Dusting off the cover, he showed it to the boy. The cover had a picture of a grotesque face, and the title read, "The Book of The owner said it was an extremely rare book. "How much is it?" asked the boy eagerly. The owner said that such a rare book was worth almost $2,000, but he would gladly sell it to the boy at a discounted price of $199. The boy scrimped and saved for weeks until he had enough money for the book. He ran down to the bookstore and threw his money on the counter. The owner handed over the rare book with delight. However, as the boy was leaving with his new purchase, the owner warned him never read the first page. The boy went home and opened the book. He made sure to skip the first page, carefully closing his eyes as he flipped it over. He spent the rest of the evening reading. The book was mildly interesting, and he was content with his purchase. However, for days afterward, he always wondered what could be on the first page. It was always in the back of his mind. One day, the temptation was too much. He flipped to the very first page of the book and looked down. Suddenly, he dropped the book in horror. There, in bold print, were the words, "Recommended retail price, $1.99. Gravestones. Two men were walking home after a Halloween party and decided to take a shortcut through the cemetery, just for laughs. Right in the middle of the cemetery, they were startled by a tap-tap-tapping noise coming from the misty shadows. Trembling with fear, they found an old man with a hammer and a chisel, chipping away at one of the gravestones. "Holy cow, mister," one of them said after catching his breath. "You scared us half to death. We thought you were a ghost. What are you doing working here so late?" "Those fools," the old man grumbled. "They misspelled my name." The taxi driver. A passenger in a taxi tapped the driver on his shoulder to ask him something. The driver screamed and lost control of the cab. He nearly hit a bus and then drove up on the curb and stopped just inches from a telephone pole. For a few moments, everything was silent in the cab. Then the taxi driver said, "You scared the daylights out of me." The passenger apologized and said, "I didn't realize that a tap on the shoulder could frighten someone so much." "Well, today's my first day on the job," said the taxi driver. "I used to drive a hearse." Fear of the dead. One dark night, a young woman was walking home from work. Her path took her through the cemetery. As she approached the cemetery gates, she began to shake with fear. Suddenly, she saw a man walking along the road. The woman stopped him and asked him to escort her home. He agreed, and as they passed through the cemetery, the woman clung to him and trembled. "Why are you trembling?" the man asked. "It's terrible," replied the woman. "I'm very afraid of the dead." The man was surprised and asked, "But why should you be afraid of us?"
Don't you pee. Do not pee. Do not. No.